Something we had discussed was the stylistic influence of contemporary artists. I've pulled some pictures here of like comparing like an Edward Hopper painting on the right to the School and the Birds, right? We talked about here are
Yeah,
more
that
Hopper paintings compared to juxtaposed next, and it's the lighting, it's the sky, right? And also
it's
the perspective.
it's a lot of things. I'm fascinated. If you want to go back to that earlier picture of the house by the railroad, so I love that you put those two together because the painting on the right is House by the Railroad. I just visited that house last summer, by the way.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's in up in Dobbs Ferry or Haverstraw, New York, um, on the Hudson River, and Hopper country. Like you drive through these neighborhoods, and you're basically driving through a Hopper painting constantly. But anyway, that painting, House by the Railroad, is his. It is claimed that that was the inspiration for the Bates Mansion in Psycho, and I love that you paired it with a very similar building, the schoolhouse from the Birds, of course. And there are a couple of things like yes, you've got similarities in architecture and perspective and such, but going in, we can go in at a level below that. Um, because the mood and the feeling, the vibe, the themes of these paintings are, I believe, what Hitchcock, is really grabbing onto. So, for example, that why that is so evocative of the Bates Mansion is that yeah, if we want to just come back to that so people can
Yeah.
see, um, it's on the wrong side of the tracks. It's on the other side of the tracks, right? And just like the Bates Mansion is on the wrong side of the highway where they moved the highway. The house is a little bit run down. It's forlorn. It's very tall and narrow, so it's kind of cramped. It sort of is standing cramped, just like we see Norman Bates lives a very cramped, constricted existence in his house. So it's very evocative of the character Norman Bates, who is sort of synonymous with the mansion that he lives in. So this is what, to me, gives these comparisons so much power. Um,
So
we don't know for
so
sure that it was the inspiration behind the Bates Mansion.
I noticed this similarity probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I had forgotten when I gathered these photos that it also
Yeah.
looked like the Bates Mansion. But
Yeah.
I want to show a few more here. So
Ah, beautiful.
this bottom left here is seen from the Birds, and
Yeah.
it's evocative of an Andrew Wyeth landscape, right, with the distant
Absolutely.
rising horizon, the pale, almost monochromatic colors.
Yes.
And I mentioned this one to you in email, and you
Yeah.
had never heard this one before, but
Yeah.
a lot of the characters in the Birds reminded me of Norman Rockwell paintings.
Yeah.
I didn't bring up a Rockwell painting, but there were so many of the characters, like the man who
Absolutely.
runs the store in
Yeah.
Bodega Bay, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I didn't even know about this. I'm assuming you know about this, but Salvador Dali designed a dream sequence for him in an early film.
Yeah. This is for Spellbound, 1945. And it's lovely. Like you mentioned, Gregory Peck has these dreams that through this wackadoodle Freudian psychoanalysis, if they can decipher the dream, then they can find out who the real killer is and exonerate Gregory Peck, who's on the run. It's a cockamamie story, but the idea of going into a dream analysis and using that to solve a crime was a fun Hollywood device. And it was the first time that Freud had come to Hollywood, for the movies, and um, it was Salvador Dali's first visit to Hollywood as well. And the design and the sets are absolutely spectacular. Yeah.
You had brought this photo. I was wondering if you could tell us about this and its relation to Hitchcock.
Yeah, so this is a painting, um a print of which has adorned the walls of, I don't know, 15% of children around the Western world. It's called Twittering Machine, and it's by an artist named Paul Klee, who is one of the greats of the 20th century, taught at the Bauhaus, all kinds of things. Um, and he was also Hitchcock's favorite artist. He He loved his work. He owned 4 of his works. He didn't own this, but the what is fascinating about this picture is the longer you look at it, the more it seems to change and evolve and morph. For most people, when they first look at it, it looks rather whimsical with those little curly cues and those snappy little beaks. But the more you look at it, the creepier it gets. And so it's almost like running a movie before your very eyes. It changes. And that changeable quality is sort of evoked in the color wash in the background. It's actually not a painting. It's a sort of a print technique, not unlike doing like a carbon copy. But Hitch, I believe, was drawn to him because of this notion of humor and whimsy blending so seamlessly and perfectly with the macabre. And that's what his movies are all about. And so if there's one piece of art out there that is, you could say, is sort of a manifesto work that would sum up Hitchcock, this might come the closest. You can imagine looking at this picture, cranking that little crank, and what kind of music would you hear? Maybe it would sound like the Funeral March of the Marionettes from Alfred Hitchcock Presents, right? The theme song. So to understand Hitchcock, who extolled his virtues all the time, he said, I wish Klee had been my storyboard artist. He would have made great storyboards. Wow. He held a lot of affinity. Like I said, he owned 4 of his works himself, his first major art acquisition, and he owned a museum worth of art in his house. His first big acquisition was a Klee in 1937.
And I recall, I thought I had another, in North by Northwest, apparently he wanted this house to be designed based upon a Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah. They'd reached out to Frank Lloyd Wright to design a house. They knew it would be just a model, and they got the estimate back and said, "No, we can do it ourselves."
Oh, that's funny.
People believe this exists, and it only exists on paper, on film.